Good morning. God, my Heavenly Father, the great I am, has compelled me to tell this story to the American people. The courts have repeatedly dismissed my cases to keep this story from coming out, but I have decided to tell it anyway. My name is Kirky Webster Sr. I am a retired lead Geospatial-Intelligence cartographic analyst. I work for the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency, better known as NGA, and its predecessor agency, the National Imagery and Mapping Agency, better known as NIMA. I worked for 23 years before my security clearance was revoked to force me into retirement. I discovered the NGA's predecessor agency, NIMA, was colluding with officials at the EEOC's Baltimore field office to illegally dismiss the EEO complaints of its black employees in January of 2001 when they sought to dismiss my case, agency case number GI00E24. This is because NGA's predecessor agency, the National Imagery and Mapping Agency, NIMA, was embarrassed about my former supervisor Teresa Boyd's situation because it got out of control. Ms. Boyd stated that she fought hard to give me an excellent appraisal, but senior managers Jack Hill and Ava Colasso de Cruz would not let her because they directed her to discriminate against me on the basis of my race, black Afro-American, and reprisal. But Ms. Boyd paid for identifying those senior managers with her career and eventually her life. I filed an equal employment opportunity complaint, better known as an EEO complaint, that became formal in the year 2000 at the National Imagery and Mapping Agency, NIMA, a predecessor agency of the NGA. The EEO complaint was agency case number G as in girl, I as in India, 00E as in Edward, 24. The complaint was against my former branch chief, Ms. Teresa Boyd, because for the second time in a row, she would not allow me to apply for promotion. I asked why, and Ms. Boyd stated to me in person that two senior managers had directed her to retaliate against me, the late Ava Colasso de Cruz, a GS-14, and Mr. Jack Hill, who was at that time a GS-15 and was later promoted to a senior executive. Shortly after my attorney, who I later parted ways with, delivered a pretext statement to NIMA's Office of General Counsel in December of 2000, Ms. Boyd set the ladies' restroom on fire and was heard yelling, "Burn, baby, burn." I believe the agency revoked Ms. Boyd's security clearance to remove her as a witness because she was honest enough to identify the senior managers by name who directed her to discriminate and retaliate against me. Since the case was before an EEOC administrative law judge, Ms. Boyd could only be compelled to serve as a witness if she were employed by NIMA. Therefore, her clearance was revoked because her testimony was damaging to NIMA's management and director at the time, Lieutenant General James King, who preceded retired Air Force General James Clapper Jr. After Ms. Boyd's security clearance was revoked, but things went from bad to worse. According to NJA's Assistant General Counsel Jack Rickert's 2005 affidavit to the EEOC's OFO, Office of Federal Operations, and I quote, Ms. Boyd suffered from bipolar disorder. On or about December 13, 2000, Ms. Boyd entered the manic stage of her depressive disorder while at work in the agency's Bethesda headquarters building. Ms. Boyd started a fire in the women's restroom and locker room. She then began screaming, "Burn, baby, burn," as employees fled the building after the fire alarm sounded. The thick smoke spread through the first floor of the building. The police subsequently arrested Ms. Boyd for arson and destruction of property. The Maryland District Court, however, declined to sentence her to prison because of her disabling condition. She was instead placed on probation with the provision that she take her prescribed medicine and stay away from the agency. The agency proposed to remove Ms. Boyd for arson, which caused more than $10,000 of damage to the facility. The agency, however, permitted Ms. Boyd to resign and assisted her in applying for disability retirement from OPM, which was granted by OPM 4 months later. End quote. I overheard a co-worker on the phone with Teresa Boyd during the month of February 2002. Teresa Boyd stated to him that she had been at a Virginia court. The co-worker stated to me that Teresa said the judge told her during a previous court appearance that if she pled guilty, the judge would go easy on her. Teresa went on to tell my co-worker that during the February court appearance, the judge was not easy on her, but instead was very hard on her. This same statement was part of the 103 of 107 claims that my attorney Chris Brown was pressured by EEOC Supervisor Administrative Law Judge Samuel Titleman to drop because they did not want you, citizens of this great nation, to know what they did to Miss Boyd. They made a huge mistake if they thought I would be cowardice enough to keep this quiet. God has not given me the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Mr. Rickert's sworn statement here proves the District Court of Maryland, who transferred my case from a black judge to a white judge to dismiss it, and the Virginia court were already aware of the Teresa Boyd tragedy well before a decision was rendered in my case. And this has created a conflict of interest that has resulted in my being denied justice. The revocation of Ms. Boyd's clearance later factored in her death after her livelihood was taken away. But my discriminators were promoted and rewarded by NJ's Director James Clapper Jr. To hide the circumstances surrounding Ms. Boyd, NIMA's name was changed to the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency, better known as NGA, by Director James Clapper Jr., to avoid being investigated by the Office of Special Counsel, since intel agencies are exempt from OSC investigations. Ms. Boyd's clearance was revoked because her testimony was damaging to NIMA. Ms. Boyd could only be compelled to serve as a witness for an EEOC hearing as long as she was employed by NIMA. Therefore, her clearance was revoked because her testimony was damaging to NIMA's management and director at the time, Lieutenant General James King, who preceded General Clapper. In a February 15, 2005 affidavit to the EEOC's Office of Federal Operations, better known as the OFO, the NJA's Assistant General Counsel, Jack Rickert, tried to make it seem that Ms. Boyd was on good terms with NGA. He even went so far as to lie on me when he stated to the EEOC's OFO that, and I quote, during the witness interview, she confided in me that having an appellant make personal attacks in his EEO complaints against her may have been one of the contributing factors in her setting the fires due to emotional strain. But I stated to the OFO that Rickert was a liar because he failed to tell them that Ms. Boyd, during the month of July 2002, came into the NIMA NGA parking lot and wrecked several cars. I was told she repeated the act at the NIMA Reston, Virginia Center as well. A co-worker stated that Teresa Boyd was heard yelling, "What are you going to do to me now?" It appears that whatever occurred among NIMA/NGA, Maryland, and the Virginia court is what led Ms. Boyd to go on the car-wrecking rampage. A co-worker stated that he saw Teresa Boyd in the labor union office talking with Marilyn Mary about a week before the car-wrecking incident at Bethesda. He stated that he overheard something about her having her clearance back. He thought she could have been at the union to see about getting her job back. I was saddened to hear that Ms. Boyd, who lost her home and job due to the revocation of her security clearance, was killed when her car was stopped on the side of the road while she was attempting to see her mother off to begin living with her brother Jimmy in Florida. This statement is according to Leesburg Today article that I still have in my possession and several emails that were disseminated throughout the agency, which conveyed that Ms. Boyd's mother lived with her prior to losing her home. The agency's Assistant General Counsel, Jack Rickert, who also lied in a sworn affidavit to D.C. District Judge Christopher Cooper, stated the following lie to the EEOC's Office of Federal Operations in a February 15, 2005 affidavit, and I quote, "During the witness interview, she confided in me that having an appellant make personal attacks in his EEO complaints against her may have been one of the contributing factors in her setting the fires due to emotional strain. Shortly after this interview, Ms. Boyd informed me that the EEO process was too stressful for her and that she would follow her doctor's advice not to testify." End quote. The NJA's Assistant General Counsel picked on the wrong one when he lied on me because I am not Teresa Boyd. I'm telling the American people right now that Ms. Boyd setting the restroom on fire and the car wrecking incident was directly related to the actions that Jack Rickert and the Virginia, Maryland District Court judges imposed on her, not for me exercising my civil rights to file an EEO complaint. The agency's Assistant General Counsel, Jack Rickert, also stated in his affidavit, and I quote, Rickert also lied in his affidavit to the OFO when he stated, "It wasn't long after this phone conversation, I was distressed to learn that Miss Boyd had jumped in front of a truck on a busy highway in Northern Virginia and had died instantly." End quote. Rickert's account of what happened to Ms. Boyd was different from what the Leesburg Today stated. To refute what the Assistant General Counsel stated, I provided the OFO with a Leesburg Today article dated 20 August 2002 entitled Stranded Motorists that reads as follows, and I quote, Stranded motorists killed on Route 15. August 19, 2002, a Herndon woman was killed Friday morning when she was struck on side of Route 15 business less than a mile north of Ida Lee Park in Leesburg, Virginia. Teresa Joan Boyd, 42, of Herndon was struck at around 5:55 a.m. by a Lincoln Town car driven by Abdul Jabbar Chowdhury, 42, of Alexandria, according to Virginia State Trooper Randy Baracker. Boyd had pulled off the road sometime after 5 a.m. on August 16th and realized her car wouldn't start, Baracker said. She flagged down a driver of a commercial vehicle and asked for a ride to Dulles Airport, he said, but the driver could not take her there. Boyd then attempted to signal another car driven by Chowdhury, who was traveling in the northbound lane, according to investigators. He must have been focused on seeing her vehicle and did not see Boyd, Baracker said, adding that the victim was wearing dark clothing and standing near the edge of the road. Chowdhury was not charged in the incident. End quote. Whose account do you believe? The Leesburg Today or the NJ Assistant General Counsel, who lied to D.C. District Judge Christopher Cooper in his sworn declaration and who stated to the UFO during the witness interview, she confided in me that having an appellant make personal attacks and his EEO complaints against her may have been one of the contributing factors in setting the fires due to emotional strain. Shortly after this interview, Ms. Boyd informed me that the EEO process was too stressful for her and that she would follow her doctor's advice not to testify. It wasn't long after this phone conversation I was distressed to learn that Ms. Boyd had jumped in front of a truck on a busy highway in Northern Virginia and had died instantly. End quote. The NIMA NGA revoked this woman's clearance because she identified by name the two senior managers who directed her to discriminate and retaliate against me. She set the restrooms on fire because they revoked her security clearance so she wouldn't testify at the EEOC hearing because her testimony was damaging to the agency. Every employment lawyer knows that you cannot compel a former employee to be a witness at an EEOC hearing. They can be subpoenaed to testify in court, but not an EEOC hearing. Another reason Jack Rickert and acting EEO Director John Sikowski colluded with Baltimore field office officials to have my case dismissed was to prevent records from surfacing that revealed several of NGA's white employees who were listed as not promoted during the 2000 Workforce 21 promotion process was still unofficially promoted. This means the promotion that I had to fight for. Some of NGA's white employees were just given unofficially. NGA's predecessor agency, NIMA's human resource official, Sandra Renfro, produced email that was called a supplemental promotion list that showed white NIMA NGA employees who were listed as not promoted during the official Workforce 21 promotion process were still somehow promoted unofficially. But the black NIMA employees who were listed as not selected for promotion during the official Workforce 21 promotion process remain not selected for promotion in the 2000 Workforce 21 promotion process, which took place under then NIMA Director General James King. Sandra Renfro's name appears at the bottom of the supplemental promotion list as the human resource representative point of contact. It appears that the supplemental promotion list was a list of fraudulent promotions. The recent NGA study just proves discrimination against black NGA employees has been going on for decades. To retaliate against me for filing a complaint that exposed blatant discrimination and these fraudulent promotions, NGA's then newly appointed director, James Clapper Jr., changed NIMA's name to NGA and made NGA responsible for the adjudication, granting, and revocation of their own security clearances, just so they could ultimately revoke my clearance. The HR representative who released the infamous supplemental promotion list, Sandra Renfro, was one of the voting members who voted to permanently revoke my security clearance for filing a complaint that forced her to expose the fraudulent promotion of white NGA employees who were not officially promoted during the 2000 Workforce 21 promotion process. Ironically, NJ's Director Clapper stated in the year 2001 of The Edge, a NIMA newspaper, that blacks are clearly the most disadvantaged in terms of promotions, rotational assignments, and percentages of SESs than, for example, of any grouping in NIMA. Yet he did nothing about it. After the 2001 settlement, NGA Director retired Air Force General James Clapper Jr. promoted my discriminator John Jack Hill to a senior executive position, then intentionally placed him over my organization to discriminate against me. The NGA management wanted me out so badly that I and several other cartographers were kept in Murray Hall of the NGA headquarters in Bethesda, Maryland, for nearly a year doing absolutely no work at all. Cartographer who was making $50K to $80,000 per year were allowed to read newspapers and watch TV while America was fighting the war on terror, all because NIMA's management was trying to figure out how to fire me. My co-workers and I were told by our supervisor, Dave Barlack, not to put down a code for our work description because it wasn't necessary. This was to hide that we were allowed to sit for 8 hours a day doing absolutely no work. It all came to a stop after I overheard a female co-worker tell another NIMA cartographer that we were not going to do any work until they, meaning management, NJ's management, had gotten rid of me. This is also recorded in verbatim testimony that I still have because I filed an EEO complaint at the formal level on what I overheard, and it was investigated. This was among the 103 of 107 claims that my attorney, Christopher Brown, was forced by EEOC Supervisory Administrative Law Judge Samuel Titleman to drop. I am aware that responsible management official John Jack Hill has retired and is currently owner of a DoD contracting company that serves NGA. I've been forced out of my employment since June of 2011 due to the revocation of my clearance. Like Ms. Boyd, had a stroke, could have died, yet my white discriminators are still employed and thriving. They counted me out, but God has spared my life so that I could tell this story to citizens of this great nation. I am seeking justice that will see these officials held responsible for what they did to me and Ms. Boyd. Due to retaliation on the basis of reprisal, I was forced into retirement June of 2012, 1 year after my security clearance was revoked on 17 June 2011. I was placed on indefinite suspension. My honor and integrity were violated when I was escorted off my job by 2 armed security guards in the company of my co-workers. This all occurred 7 months after I had a stroke at work. To make matters worse, my security clearance was revoked, and the Human Resource Department intentionally failed to inform me that I, due to my 23 years of federal service and age 51, was entitled to an immediate annuity, better known as a discontinued service retirement, or DSR. Being intentionally misinformed about this monthly pension resulted in unnecessary financial hardship and emotional strain for my family and me. My $122,000 per year salary was stripped away 45 days after my security clearance was revoked and I was placed on indefinite suspension. After the financial strain caused by COVID-19, it isn't difficult for one to imagine the financial challenges that befell my family and me when my $122,000 per year salary was suddenly taken away 45 days after my security clearance was revoked. The NGA Human Resources Department intentionally allowed me to go 1 entire year without my pension and no income, all the while knowing that as a 23-year employee and 51 years old at the time, that I was entitled to an immediate pension known as a discontinued service retirement. The revocation of my security clearance was intentionally instigated by the Assistant General Counsel of the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency, Jack W. Rickert, and his NGA and EEOC cronies because I blew the whistle, good trouble, whistleblowing, mind you, on these white NGA and EEOC officials in March of 2001 who were colluding to illegally dismiss the equal employment opportunity claims of merit that were filed by NGA's black employees by sending hearing requests for complaints of merit directly to former EEOC Baltimore Field Office Director James L. Lee, who is currently the Deputy General Counsel of the entire EEOC. These white men colluded to circumvent the Title VII civil rights laws that Dr. Martin Luther King fought so hard for. The director at the time Lieutenant General James Clapper Jr. colluded with my retaliators by removing the union and making NJ able to adjudicate and approve the security clearances of their own employees. This means while a person's security clearance is revoked, in order to get his security clearance reinstated, he or she has to go before the same NGO officials that he has accused of discriminating against him. This is what happened to me. I am asking President Joe Biden and the Justice Department to look into my allegations and then do what the district courts and the Fourth Circuit Court have failed to do. See to it that justice prevails by rewarding me, my wife Katrina, and my 2 children with the back pay and front pay and other damages that we are rightfully due. Thank you for listening to this message.